you have to take care of your knives. Taking care of them includes washing them, drying them, not using them for like improper tasks. Like I once had a guy, I had this like beautiful little knife. This is like an $80 knife. Some guy grabbed it off the counter and tried to open a can with it, and I swear to God, I was gonna punch him in the head. Like, who does that? So when it comes to taking care of your knives, there's one more important factor that's worth mentioning, and that is storage. So it's very obvious that you need to store knives for safety, right? You want to store them in a way where they're not going to cut somebody. You can't just like throw your knives in a drawer and like expect somebody to not rifle through them and cut themselves. Like, it's really important to store your knives in a responsible manner. And we have a lot of different options. So a really common option are these guys. These are called knife sheaths. And basically you just like slide your knife into them, and that's it. It's pretty easy. I actually don't prefer these because I find that they can slip off with jostling. So if you put them in a drawer, they can kind of like fall off because they're, they have a pivot point where they're tightest and everywhere else is kind of loose, and they can just like fall off. And if they fall off, like, the only thing more dangerous than a loose knife is a knife that you don't know is loose and you feel safe around, right? So if you think you have a drawer full of knives that are covered and this is like slipped off and this guy's just lying somewhere and the cover's over there, like, it's a recipe for disaster and a whole lot of heartache. So instead of these guys work. So I'm not gonna, say these guys are bad, but what I actually prefer are these. These are available on Amazon for like $5. These are actually called, they're called Blade Safe. And these are amazing because they close around the knife and they hold it. And they have these like little rubber grippy things that hold it in place. So you put your knife in here like this and it's on. Like, that's not coming off. Like, it's on there, right? Like, these are great if you travel with your knives, if you want to put them in a drawer. They're also like big and bulky enough to really protect the knife. So in these guys, like, you can still scratch up your knife a little bit. The entire blade is covered and it's super protected. And they make little ones too, for smaller knives, which I really like. They make them for all different sizes. And like, see, it's really on there. It's not coming off. Like, these little cases are amazing. Now, another option for storing your knife, a lot of people, you see them, they have on the counter like butcher blocks, right? It's like a square and it's got the holes in it. Those are really great as well. I tend to not prefer those because they take up a lot of counter space. They can look really nice, and if they contribute to your kitchen decor, that's awesome. But like, counter space for me is at a premium, and so like I want to use up as little counter space as possible with like permanent stuff. So what I have at home is I actually have a magnetic bar. And I got mine at IKEA for like $9 or $10. And basically, the knives just sit on the wall like this, just dunk. And those are great. It's always handy. Although I do gotta say, one downside to having your knife on a magnetic strip on the wall is that they are exposed to the elements. Like, they're exposed to hot and cold, like your air conditioner, ambient moisture coming through the air. Good thing about these is they kind of protect your knife from like atmospheric changes, so moisture and temperature. Like, they're fine in here, they're pretty protected. If you leave them out on the wall like that, like, I've noticed that my knives dull a little faster just because they're like exposed, especially if you have them close to something moist. Like, I have mine sitting right next to the kitchen sink, and so there's a lot of like moisture that's kind of like wafting up with the hot water. So I'm actually going to rethink how I store my knives, just because my priority is to keep them safe and keep them sharp. This is another option. This is like a hybrid option. This is a magnetic butcher block. And so this butcher block is cool because it still sits out. You still have your knives accessible, and it's just magnetic. Like, they just stick to it like this. It's still safe because you can see where the knives are. Like, they're not going to cut anybody unless you're like rubbing up against it, which I would highly not recommend. And it's just a really handy and really attractive way to manage your knives. And then there's one more option, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't have one, but I've seen them. It's like a general butcher block, right? So butcher blocks, generally they're a block of wood and they have holes in them. And you have to have the knife that fits in the right size hole. And like, if you have too many big knives, they don't fit. Or if you have too many small knives, they don't fit. And it's kind of a nightmare. But what they have are these blocks. It's like a square and it's long. And in them is these like long, I don't know, they look like dry spaghetti, like long dry noodles. And there's just tons of them in there. And what you do is you just slip your knife in. So you've got all these little fibers that hold it in place, and you just slide it in and it holds it in place. And you can put a ton of knives in those things. Like, I have fit like 15 knives, or seen like 15 knives fit into those things at the cooking store, and I think they're awesome. So if you want a butcher block and maybe you have a lot of knives that you don't think would fit in a butcher block, those sort of custom butcher blocks are really handy.